At 6:32, folks. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board, and tonight is Wednesday, November 7th, 2018. And if you join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Randy, please.
Okay, trustee Marks is excused and absent for tonight. Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, Superintendent of Public Works Kirk Page, Water Operator Lenny Bodinas is here. Our committee members present is Mike Springer from the Planning, Recreation, and Roads Committee.
Thank you.
And our attorney.
Oh, and our attorney, Roger Zappa, is here.
Public comment. Anybody wish to address the board? You can go first, Mike, if you like. Name and address, please.
Mike, do you want to push the button on the bottom of that microphone until the green light comes on, and that you'll be on? No, just push the button on the bottom and just push it for about 4 seconds.
Sounds like it's working.
All right.
Thank you.
You didn't tell him 4 seconds.
That was it.
He said till it turns green.
Trigger happy, you know. Okay. Good evening. My name is Mike Springer. I'm here on behalf of the Rec Committee. And tonight, actually, it's appropriate because this is public input, and that's what we're actually after tonight, more public input. Next, oh, wait, hold on. I'm in control of this time. Okay. So we are in the process right now of doing a recreation plan update. And this is part of the update. One of the things that we're hoping is that we're going to get some feedback after people observe this, that I ask them to contact our planning and zoning administrator, Jason McCarthy, with some input. I'm going to I'll tell you what that input is momentarily. This is one of the documents that's involved with updating the plan. We have to have a DNR approved rec plan, and it needs to be in by February 1st, so we're under the gun here. We've been working on it for a number of months, actually probably about a year. But one of the things you'll notice here is that it talks about the public input process, and that's what I'm doing here tonight. I'm adding to the public input process because it's an important part of the rec plan update. So this is our current rec plan. I just want to point out to you at the bottom of the plan how many different organizations that we interact with that are involved with this rec plan, and that it's not just Marquette Township, but it's in the community. It's throughout the community. So what we're after tonight is input on action items. These are specific things that the rec committee has been charged to do in the former plan. You're going to see, this is a key right here, you're going to see 3 different colors. One is red with a check mark hopefully by it. That means that it was completed. Now, it's completed not just because of the rec committee, but it's completed because we had a forward progressive thinking board, this board, one before. Some of you are carryovers from when this was first introduced. The next key is going to be green, and it's going to show that it's in progress right now, and it should be completed next year. And then the ones that we did not complete in the former rec plan are circled in blue. And so at this point, the rec committee will be considering including that in the new action plan or action program. So here's our first slide here. 2014, you can see that the Schwemmwood Park restrooms and changing area, we don't have that at this point. A lot of things have to happen before that, and hopefully the committee will decide that that's going to be a carryover. Lions Field, the warming building with restrooms and drinking fountain has been completed. A couple other grants for Schwemmwood Park. We had 2 development grants, actually 3 development grants for Schwemmwood Park. That has improved the trailhead, has improved access to the trailhead, and it also has an ADA compatible walkway that goes up to the overlook, the wetland overlook. Here, we had a public input session on September the 26th, and there were some people that recommended they were looking for some kind of a child-resistant barrier that would keep the younger people that are running around kind of confined to just the children's area. This we haven't done. We hope maybe sometime in the future we can have a trailhead down in that area. Also, AT&T's been really good with us, and we've been able to acquire a number of easements that we need. And that's one of the things that even if we can't develop something, if we can get easements at any point, we can always develop things later on when we have more money. Here's a couple things that are in progress. Matter of fact, this is where we still have to finish up some native landscaping there at Schwemmwood. And this is where the sidewalk that went in this summer. And we still have a few things that we have to finish up over at Lions Field, but those should be completed next year. Schwemmwood Park, I mentioned the ADA access and improvements to the parking that happened this summer. And then also this here, we got to keep this because we need some site lighting at Lions Field. And then, of course, the non-motorized connector that's so important to this underpass. And then in progress on the north side, so we can connect North Star and Wright Street. And this is a recent recommendation. I believe you're going to deal with that recommendation tonight, both from the Rec Committee and the Planning Commission, is to put a roof over the ice rink. And got unanimous support from both the Rec Committee and the Planning Commission to do that. So this is what we need to know from the community. What recreation facilities would you like to see in our new rec plan? So please let us know so that we can start a new action program. How should we fund recreation facilities? If you get some ideas about that, we'd like to hear that. And there should be one more word in here. How should we fund recreation facilities and their maintenance? Because anything we build, we have to maintain, and it's an important part of the puzzle. So I just want to show you a slide that was presented to the board back in 2015. Just a little bit about what we've been able to accomplish. The blue, the green, the yellow, and we'll call that golden. Those 4 slices of the pie, that's 75% or 72% of a total of almost $400,000. Those were grants that we received from the state of Michigan, either a passport grant or an MNRTF grant. Fortunately, we had Rec Authority contributed $25,000. We had 43 businesses and organizations that contributed almost $16,000. The Sioux Tribe contributed $5,000. Marquette County Community Foundation, $500. But the township was responsible for $63,000 of that puzzle, or that pie, and that's at 16%. And so that's the part that's gone away. Due to unfunded mandates, loss of revenue sharing, and dark store tax tribunal decisions, that money isn't there anymore. So in responding to us about what would you like to see, if you have some ideas on how we can make up for that black part, please let Mr. McCarthy know. So you can email Mr. McCarthy at this address here. It's his name, all lowercase, followed by @marquettetownship.org. Thank you.
You can leave that right there, Mike.
Right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. So as he said, that is part of, not really a requirement, but it is sort of an requirement to let the public know and get public input before this is finalized. That's also the board too. So if you have anything you want to recommend to Jason or Mike, you've got ideas, or if you want to have it as an agenda item next meeting, something like that, just let somebody know, let me know or somebody. So we want to keep going for the next 5 years, I believe it is, right? 5-year plans. Okay, any questions for Mike? Okay, thanks for putting that together. Any other public comment? Anybody wish to address the board? Okay. Any comment regarding what Mike did? No? Okay. Consent agenda. Tonight, this consists of the approval of regular meeting minutes of October 16th and the board work session minutes of October 24th and 26th. Bills payable in the amount of $147,175.76. And we have a budget amendment 2018-11 that will be read later. Received committee and other reports, including the election committee draft minutes of October 16th and the rec committee draft minutes of the same. Road committee draft minutes of October 2nd. Road committee work session draft minutes of September 27th and October 10th. Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority draft agenda of October 24th and the draft minutes of the September 26th meeting. Marquette Area Wastewater Treatment Facility Advisory Board meeting minutes of September 20th. Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority agenda for October 24th, and actually that meeting has been canceled. And draft board meeting minutes of September 19th. Utility billing calendar for November, and I had no report tonight. Treasurer's report from September, and charters annual or monthly or weekly communication regarding channel lineup.
I'll move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
And do you want to read your,
Yep, the budget amendment present to the board 2018, number 11, so the 11th one this year. There'll be probably a few more before the end, but the highlight of this is authorization is requested to increase expenditures in various general fund departments. Building and grounds labor charges have been higher than originally budgeted. Vehicle expenses will require more funding due to tire repairs, lighting, upgrades, and tractor items, in addition to monthly gasoline expenses. The assessor department will require additional funding mainly for supplies, travel, and hospitalization. Street lighting was budgeted 12% lower than the actual cost for 205 lights, which has remained the same as the 2017 rate. The recreation department increase is mainly for overtime due to the Lions Field lockups. The offset will come from the fund balance.
okay, and we need a roll call.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0 and 1 absent.
Okay, then we have approval of the rest of the agenda. I do have one correction that we need to add. If you look at your committee appointment memo that I gave you, a couple of mistakes were made on the agenda. So if you go down to 9B, Board of Review, it should be Truscott, Kidda, and Place. And then we need to add number 5 would be the Zoning Board of Appeals, should be Sergeant and Place. And that does match up with the memo that I included in the packet.
I'll move to accept the agenda as amended.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Number 6, a township water system presentation by staff. Kirk and/or Lenny.
What map do you want first, Kirk?
The overall system map.
Okay.
The first three are essentially.
This one right here? Or,
No, not today, but earlier, last week.
this one right here, right?
No. It wasn't a slide, it was
Right here?
the ones that were emailed to the board members.
Yeah, the big one.
Well, this one is the big one here.
The other
Just gives you the different phases that happen.
It was in an email from,
Let me look.
in my memo, it's the one that's identified as page number 5 at the bottom.
Okay.
It's not in color, but should have that same one in bigger size that I had sent out to you.
yeah, there were like three drawings.
This one right here, right?
Nope.
Actually, that was one of them.
There.
Okay, I gotta see if I can find that here.
So anyway, while he's searching for that, during budget discussion, which was preceded by the CIP discussions, there were questions about the operation of the system that came up, and a bit of a discussion. So Randy thought it'd be good if we just kind of gave you an overview of how the whole thing is connected and how it works. And it is kind of complicated. I mean, for the system our size, we're about as complicated as any in the country, I'm going to say. But basically, the first map we're going to be looking at is from 2009, and so it was the system that existed in 2009. And the important thing that we're looking at is all the different pressure districts.
I'll get there, Kirk.
Yeah, that's fine.
There you go.
And, okay, that's good. So the, and I see there aren't copies in your packet. So even though it might have been emailed, I'll put copies of everything in your boxes tomorrow. So this is the system as it existed in 2009. Again, it's showing all the pressure districts and all the infrastructure we had as of that time. Okay, and then the second one would be, again, like a clearer view. It's the one that was upside down.
Okay, that one right there.
That one right there, yeah. It's basically the same map, but this was like used during the project or just after the project to show, again, the various pressure districts. So essentially, we have a number of districts. You know, we've got the Cox Gravity District, we've got the Northwoods Gravity District, we've got the Grove High Service District, we've got the Chapel Ridge, or the Northwoods Low Pressure District, Northwoods High Pressure District, and then the Southwest Pump District. And then the third one would be a future proposed project, which again is the same thing, except it shows, again, the pressure districts And the
Last map, Randy.
new,
I only got two.
Two there, and then,
but I'd sent him 3.
okay, I got the third one. Let me get that up here.
Okay.
I think it's this one right here.
Nope, we could jump to this. This is actually, this is the one I sent you today.
Yeah,
Okay. I thought it'd be good to kind of provide an overview of, like, the history of the project. So this first slide right here shows the initial project from the early 70s. It also includes a few mains that were constructed after the project. So again, the pressure districts are overlaid on this map. You can see there's the Cox Gravity District. So basically, at that time, we were still receiving water from Marquette. We received it to the Cox tank. So generally speaking, the largest area was gravity out of the tank. But there was one district, the Pink District, which at that time was the Cox Pump District. So in other words, we had to pump 24/7 to pressurize the service area. That included basically 41 out to Wright Street. We did not go beyond Wright Street. So everything in that area. And basically at 41 is, partially in the gravity district and partially in the pump district. So that was 24/7. So then in the early 90s, the DDA TIF was established. And that's when basically we started constructing. Can I control this from here?
you can, yeah.
Great.
Make sure it's on though, Kirk. Make sure it's on the side.
It's on.
Should be able to move the map.
Am I pointing in the right direction? Or?
I can move it for you if it's not working, but.
No, the battery's dead already.
I'll move it. You want the second slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Water building mains in the DDA district in the 90s, early 90s. So this shows those mains, plus all the mains that the DDA put in and some mains that, private developers put in as well. So when we did that, we still received water. We were still receiving water from the city. It came to the Cox tank. But we used the Cox pump station when this project was started to send water to the Northwoods tank. Okay. So we did not use the Cox station after that point. But then, as you can see, the tank is actually located on the edge of a district. Most of these districts again are defined by storage tanks. So we had another pump station built at the Northwoods tank to pressurize the area in blue there. And again, they ran 24/7. So the third major expansion of the project occurred in roughly 2006. That's when we put in the wells. So we can go to the next one. Okay, for that project, we had the well field, and we call it the Grove well field. It's actually, it's not on a street, but it's south of Grove Street. It would be on Vandermove if that were extended, but so we constructed mains to a new tank in Chapel Ridge called the Chapel Ridge tank. That station did not have a pump because at that point, we didn't have any mains beyond that point. So basically it's gravity out of the tank. We pump from the well field to the Chapel Ridge tank. it gravities out of the Chapel Ridge tank. At this point, our water supply is not so much the city of Marquette, it's the Grove well field. So we pump the well field to the Chapel Ridge tank. That in turn fills the Northwoods tank by gravity. Okay, so that project also, in addition to filling the Northwoods tank, we had to, the area that's previously pumped, okay, the low pressure district, was supplanted by the Chapel Ridge tank. So the Northwoods pump district then became the gravity district. So again, that reduced our cost in terms of operational costs, because pumping is, electrical use is our biggest single expense other than people. So that's the normal operation of the system. And then the next slide will show the proposed and probably final major expansion of the system. So that will show the Morgan Meadows well field, which will pump to the another proposed tank. And then also the Mason's Bluff, which was actually constructed after our phase 3, but before phase 4. Developer came in, wanted water. He was outside any supply area that we had. And we are, at that point, we were already applying for the DWR funding for the Morgan Meadows project. So he constructed the mains and put in a well. And originally, it was just going to be mains that were going to be hooked up to the new system. But then at the point where the township, for some reason, decided not to proceed with that project, that's where a well was put in there, and pressure tanks were proposed. But because they weren't hooked up to our system yet, the well is only permitted to serve when owned by the health department. So, but the mains are there, and the well is there. So all we need would be basically pumps to pump it to the new tank. And he'd also proposed pressure tanks. So they would actually, the existing well would pump into a pressure tank. There are actually a series of pressure tanks to serve the district because, again, it wasn't hooked up, but basically at that point, he went bankrupt, the project stopped. So in the meantime, we still own the mains and we still own the well. But that's it. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the overall operation and the progression. So when we did that, we were able to supply everything except the original Cox Gravity District. So we could supply the Cox Pump District, the Northwoods Gravity District, the Northwoods Pump District, all from the well field. So the reason I was bringing up improvements needed to the Cox Station is, first of all, right now it's only used in case of emergency, in case we have to somehow, for some reason, take the Northwoods tank out of service, for painting or whatever. Or if we have to, we've had a couple of times where we had to replace a valve, and there was a main break, which meant shutting off basically the transmission main, so we had to pump, directly from Cox. But I think because of our development and our lack of, it looks like it's going to be a while before that fourth major project is completed. I think essentially at some point in the near future, we're going to be exceeding the capacity of our well field. And when that happens, the only way I can meet the demand, I got to somehow eliminate one of these districts. And what I'd have to do is to, and the only way I can do that is to start up Cox again, okay, to fill the Northwoods. So that would eliminate basically, essentially half the system. So now when that happens, two things are going to happen. One is going to be the wholesale rate that we're getting from the city as a result of a court case. It's not just a wholesale rate, it's a wholesale rate plus a discount on top of that. That's going to go away. And plus the energy costs have risen quite a bit. And the upgrades that we need are to stave off. Another problem we have is when we do operate it, even under emergency service or conditions, our peak demand goes up, which is if that happens, repeatedly, our rates basically triple. So that's why we don't normally do it, but at some point we're going to have to. So that's the reason I'm concerned about upgrades that I think are necessary at the Cox Station. So any questions about that?
I've got one. You were talking about not having, if we get to the point where we're not going to have enough water from the regular well field, the Grove. I know we have property that's south of that area that is able to have, I'm guessing, new wells. Has it been explored at all, or, because you're kind of saying west, you're focusing more going west with Mason's Bluff.
Well, we have explored it, and that's, there may be east of us, or actually I would say south, be more south. But the problem is, it's not really close, and it would be, there's a lot of rock, so it'd be kind of costly to do that. So,
Well, quite frankly, the other point is where's the maximum water, and that's why we're at the Morgan Meadows. That's been pumped, test pumped, and that is where our maximum source of water is. Can there be additional wells south of our current wells? Yes. Will they be at the production level that we need to meet the future demand? No. That's why we developed the well field at Morgan Meadows.
yeah, the wells at Morgan Meadows are there. We own the property. So the only thing we need is to
connect. Yeah, and what Kirk has put up is basically just to give you an overall graphic of how our systems operates. And I know that's not going to answer the questions that a lot of the board members had, and that's why we have Lenny here tonight, is to get into those details of why the PLC project and the centered projects are important to the operation. But I guess, just in a thumbnail sketch, the Cox tank is our largest tank. That's our largest reservoir. That is the one that we rely on when we have maximum capacity needs and when we have emergency needs. The issue with the Cox tank is that when those pumps come on, they come on at full force. They are not able to be controlled or reduced or modulated at all. They are on or they're off. The other tanks all have variable pumps. Those pumps can be run at varying percentages of volume, which can be managed, and that basically manages our electrical costs. As Kirk mentioned, that's other than manpower and benefits, that is the largest individual cost in public works, is the cost of energy. And we try to avoid the peaking aspect of it. If you'll notice that the ski hill only runs their snow guns at certain times of the day and certain times of the night. That's to avoid the peaking charges that they would otherwise be charged with from BLP. We do the same thing. The growth of our districts, basically, with the additional tanks that have been constructed, have allowed us to supplant, in essence, all the time need for the Cox reservoir to be pumped. It serves as a major backup reservoir. And typically when that occurs is when there's something else occurring in either the Northwoods District or the Chapel Ridge District or the Wellfield, basically where those systems have to come offline for some reason. Then we run the Cox tank, and that's a manual start. All they do is they just go in and they flip the switches and run the pumps. At that point, that's what we have to do. So what's being requested, the Cox tank, is to put in updated equipment, the control center, updated equipment that will allow those pumps to be operated variable speed and alleviate the issue with the peaking issue. So Lenny is basically our water operator and the one who essentially manages the system. I asked him to come in tonight to specifically address some of the questions that you guys have with regard to how the system operates and what kinds of things come up and what kinds of things happen, and why the PLC might be important and why the motor control systems might be important. We're not saying that they're failing today, obviously. If you look at the budget, the projection for the control center at Cox isn't until 2021. But what Kirk's proposing to do is to fund it over a 3-year period. So it's not such a large bite all at once. Similar to what we're trying to do with the fire apparatus and law enforcement, which thankfully to the residents both passed in the votes yesterday. So, and handily, I must say, more than about 3-to-1 margin. So, that's why we have Lenny here tonight, and I think he has a system that he wants to run through, or some information that he wants to run through with you, and then be prepared to answer your questions.
Thanks, Kirk, excuse me.
Let's give you the handout too. I also have a typo, so I kind of apologize when you find that on there.
You wouldn't have told us, we probably wouldn't have found it.
Well, you might have seen this one.
I think that clicker might work. You can try it, Len. Just use the arrows. Yeah.
There we go. Operation, I guess. I had fat fingers when I was typing.
That was just the Oriental version.
Quickly, Randy, is it possible to go really quick back to one of the slides Kirk had?
Yes.
Just really quick.
Which one you need?
The one where he has the 2009 pressure districts on there.
That was the first one, the vertical one.
Okay. That one right here.
Nope, the next
Nope,
one.
the other one, that one.
Yes. Okay, so basically I'm going to be talking about kind of the same thing Kirk was. In a nutshell, the green, the purple, the pink are well water. The blue would be the surface water or purchase water. The lines have changed a little bit since this map was made, but not significantly, but generally that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about. So this area here is the well water, that up there is the purchase water. So we can go back to mine. Okay, so oops. Okay, here would be the well operation. So basically what we are doing is we pump from the Grove Well House up to Chapel Ridge, which is 320,000 gallons. From there, now we set the set points at our well house based on what we want the level of Chapel Ridge to be. So when we pump up to Chapel Ridge, there is a portion as it's coming back downhill that feeds Chapel Ridge itself, Bishop Woods, and like the area around Meyer, Lowe's, Brickyard Road, that area. Now the water flows from Chapel Ridge down to Northwoods. That is done via, there's a control valve in the Northwoods pump house itself, and that is by SCADA, and we can set what level we want Northwoods to be, and that tells the valve when to open or when to shut based on our levels. Once it gets into the Northwoods tank, it feeds by gravity, basically down the 41 corridor. So it feeds Menards, Walmart, Commerce, and it actually goes all the way down to Werner Street, and actually right to this area here too. Basically that water goes all the way down and it actually stops right in the Cox pump house. So there's actually control valves that are within the Cox pump house, and that is the separation between basically the surface water and our well water. Now, if there is a problem at the Grove Well House, Chapel Ridge, even Northwoods, that's when we would have to go to our surface water district. And the problem could be an emergency problem, or it could be anything like routine maintenance. So, occasionally we have to take the tanks down for inspection, to make sure everything looks good in there, take them down for painting, any other kind of maintenance like that. Or we've had, just normal stuff, just mechanical failures that happens to equipment when it's running. Particularly, we've had check valves and stuff like that would fail. So And by the time we can get somebody out there to work on them, we still gotta keep water in the system. Okay, back to the purchase water system. So this is gonna be, if we were running our whole system off of purchase water, if we have a problem at Chapel Ridge or something else like that, when we have to keep water in the system, usually we're getting called out for another issue. We're not kicking the system on, just to kick it on. It's usually due to whether we have an emergency or whether we have a planned outage. In order to do that, we have to go to Cox itself and we have to manually kick the pumps on, as the way everything is set up right now. The system is not designed to be able to physically turn on and off, by kicking the power on right now the way it stands. Once it's running, it does run automatically. But we're not, normally when that happens, we're getting called out or we're dealing with another issue already. So this is kind of like a secondary thing to make sure that we have water. So basically the water gets into this system through the city of Marquette, through their system. It gets the Cox tank, which is 1 million gallons. Like Randy said, that's our biggest tank. Once it's in Cox tank, that water provides service to Trowbridge Park, Brookton Road, and US 41 would be east of the check valve. So pretty much like, it would be like at the Brentwood Motel in east. That's what Cox would provide. Once we're in Cox, we need to pump up to Northwoods. So the pumps that are in the Cox pump house that were once the stopping point for the well water now become the avenue to get water up to Northwoods. So once those pumps are turned on, with the SCADA and the set points that we set, what we want Northwoods to go up and down, the pumps come on at the Northwoods or at the Cox pump house. They pump up the hill and they fill up Northwoods. And then in the meantime, water is also being provided to places, again, like Walmart, Menards, the mall, all those places. Now, to get water back up towards Chapel Ridge and up towards Bishop Woods and even Meyer, there has to be a pump on at Northwoods to pressurize that system. So basically, a pump will run there 24/7, just keeping water in those areas of the system. So we will basically pump water out of the Northwoods through the pumps, and that water will go to Bishop Woods, it will go to Chapel Ridge, and will go to Meyer. It will stop. Normally, when this system is going to be running, one of these two places are going to be shut off, so that's why I got the red dots there. So it'll pump water up to this point, and usually if we're working on the Chapel Ridge tank, we have the valve off to the tank. And it will pump all the way back down towards the well house, and usually there's the control valves there that allow the well house pumps and stuff to come on. Those are actually shut off. So the water, so we do have pressure from the Northwoods pump all over that area. And we will continue to run it like that until our problem is resolved, whether Chapel Ridge is, whatever was going on there, or any of the tanks or anything like that. So that's pretty much how the two systems operate in a nutshell. We can't have them both on. I mean, I guess we could at the same time, but that's not the operation that we do. They will not work automatically with each other. So that's why we actually have to physically kick this purchase water pumps, or at Cox pumps. We have to physically kick them on at the pump house itself. And then the whole time, everything is being monitored too.
And one other piece of this whole system is people don't realize that we do have a joint system linked with the city of Marquette. So when the water comes from the lake, basically, through the processing plant at the city and is pumped to the Cox tank, we actually pump the water back to the city. We serve all the city residents that live Lincoln Street West. So we're actually serving city residents out of the Cox tank as well.
Right, because there's actually basically 2 meters at Mesquite, one that comes into the township, one that goes out of the township. Right. So that's basically what Randy's saying is the movement of water back and forth into our Cox tank too.
Yeah, we do have the capability, basically, if something really catastrophic happened to our well field or whatever, we can continue to serve. We would simply purchase more water from the city of Marquette through the Cox tank and, pump it through the system. Same thing on the other side. If something were to happen with the city, where they had, for some reason, lost access to the lake, whether there was some kind of an incident with an ore boat or whatever in the harbor, near their intake, and they had to shut down, we can backfeed to the city as well. So it's an integrated system, it's a connected system, and, and there's always been a relationship with the city where we have that joint water system that we don't have as well with the wastewater. We do jointly own the wastewater treatment plant in the city, but the whole system is set up to be a redundant system, basically, to serve both entities if the need arises. And, and the other thing that might happen is we may have a major event, a major fire or something along those lines to the west, where simply because of demand, we're drawing the tanks down, that the Cox tank would have to be fired up as well, to continue to provide that water for whatever that event is, a major incident at one of the developing areas, Lowe's, the Lowe's area, Meyer, if there was something major to happen there, that's how the water would get there.
So that's it in a nutshell. Any questions?
Dave?
Half a dozen of them. The pumps at the well field,
Yep.
they operate their variable speed.
Right now, they're actually operating, we can set the flow, but it's based on a control valve there. So it's a different type of system versus a variable speed.
Control valve is adjusted, and that's what
Yes.
causes the water
Yep.
flow to
Yep.
increase.
So we can up or lower the flow
It
with that.
selects, all the pumps don't run all the time, obviously.
No.
It selects which pumps run when.
Yes, in the computer, it's set up as like a cascading type of system, and it switches to keep them rotating pretty much.
And at the Northwoods tank, there's 4 pumps out there. 2 of them are
Yes.
pressure, 2 of them are quantity.
We call them pump 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4 are the fire pumps, so those are the really big pumps. 1 and 2 are basically, would be considered like a regular service pump, just for like regular
So
use.
they're all pressure pumps? They operate on, if
The-
they come on, they're operating on pressure?
We have one of them always running, because you always need to have pressure, so like the number 1 pump would always be running. The other ones would come on cascading versus, there are pressure switches there. As the pressure's being drawn down, that's like where your fire pumps would come on.
And that's controlled by the automatic controller?
Those ones are on mechanical switches right now.
The high volume pumps?
Yes.
The other 2 pumps are run automatically?
I believe number 2 pump that's on a mechanical switch too. The number 1 pump right now, we have that set like where it just runs all the time because it needs to. So that one's not gonna shut off.
So it's not actually being controlled, it's just on?
That one's just on, yes.
Okay. And it's not possible to fill the Chapel Ridge tank from the Northwoods tank?
The pumps aren't designed for that. We could keep water in the system, but we could keep
But
water,
it
but
stops
it
short
won't
of the
fill.
tank.
Yes, because
So you can keep
they're
the
not,
Chapel Ridge system pressurized?
Yes.
You just can't get all the way into the tank?
correct, yes.
The Cox tanks, there's 4 pumps there.
Yes, yep.
They base off their operation once, is the automatic system, is the automatic control center on out there all the time and just the pumps are off?
Well, we have a SCADA at all of our stations, and then they do monitoring, they monitor all the stations, so we can see every station from every other station. Right now, the Cox pumps are the 2 lower volume pumps. When that system is manually turned on, like the power's kicked on with the breakers,
You're not talking about turning the automatic controller on, you're talking about turning the pump on.
we actually have to turn the power on at that point, because there's nothing set
Power on
up there.
what? The pump or?
On the pump itself, correct.
Okay.
Once that pump is on, then those are run by the SCADA, based on the set points that we want. The 2 bigger
That's
fire,
based on volume at Northwoods?
the Cox pumps, when they fill up Northwoods, that's based on tank level.
Okay.
The 2 fire pumps are based on pressure.
Pressure in the Northwoods system?
Would basically be into that system, yeah.
Okay, so the Northwood tanks, there's nothing automatic about them. One's on and the rest of them don't come on unless you turn them on.
At the at the Northwoods tank, the Northwoods pump house, they're automatic as far as there's a mechanical switch that trips if the pressure it's mechanically controlled, so we set a low pressure and a high pressure.
Okay.
So the low pressure to turn on, the high pressure to turn off.
So it comes on and off by itself?
It could, yes.
Okay, it could.
Yeah, at the Northwoods. If the pressure dropped low, those pumps will come on.
Okay, without anybody interrupting their supper and going out there.
Those ones, correct, yes.
Okay.
But we do get an alarm when they go off, knowing that there's something going
And
on.
the Cox tanks, those pumps, nothing happens till somebody goes out there and turns the switch on.
Correct, yes.
Okay. The automatic controller that we're looking at a CIP request for at the Cox tank, and you keep mentioning that in relation to variable pump speeds. Is it the pump that just slowly comes on until it's up to 100%, or can it operate in the mid-range for a long period of time?
They could, there's centrifugal pumps, so they can run against a deadhead. They'll just spin. But right now, what happens at Cox is basically when the pump comes on, there's a control valve that just opens up and it provides you your water.
But the peaking charge that we keep referring to, that happens at the startup of that pump, correct?
Yes, those will happen, especially fire pumps are really good for that.
And once they've started up and they're running at 100%, that peaking charge goes away. Is that true?
I'm not sure how the Board of Light and Power works, but I do know like fire pumps, they don't like when those kick on, especially when you're not, if we were testing pumps and stuff, they want to know beforehand because especially fire pumps, they take a huge hit of power right off the bat. And that's where you start getting the peaking charge and stuff like that.
And
I'm just running, you pay.
The peaking charge can just happens if a pump comes on, okay? But that's just measured, okay? So they take the highest, there's a peaking, it's actually a separate part of the meter, okay? It'll show you what your peaking factor is. So if it's happening continually, you know, it's gonna be a high number. So if it happens rarely, it'll be,
so it's
still be a high
not,
number.
a
but-
peaking charge is not just when the pump is turned on. If the pump is running, you have a peaking charge.
If it's running without starting,
I'm sorry?
without starting up, you know, if it's continually running, okay, you'll only have if it comes on. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so just, the only time you have to worry about a peaking charge when the pump's turned on.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Or when it starts up, I should say.
And I submitted a request way earlier in the week about if we had any times that we could point to where we've experienced that peaking charge and what the peaking charge actually is. Everybody's references things that are gonna put the township in the poorhouse if they come on more than 2 or 3 times. I have a hard time thinking it's that much, but
I do know
we've really heard
when
how much it is.
when they do get a peaking charge, which we've actually got called on it before, like a pump, like especially a fire pump would come on. You know, we would say, oh, we're doing this, and they would like, okay, you need to tell us the next time, especially if we're doing a test and something like that, because it does. I can see the peaking charge on the electric meter. Kirk gets the bill for it, so he sees more of that, you know, with the cost and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess my question was, is when we get a peaking charge, what are we looking at? I mean, are we talking $1,000, $10,000?
Yeah, I don't know how that.
What is a peaking charge?
Usually, I don't see the bills, they just get paid, but what happens if we get a high demand charge, and there's some number that the BLP is looking at, if it exceeds a certain number, which happens, like Lenny said, if the fire pump comes on, you know, I'll get a letter, okay, mailed to me, saying, if this happens, you know, once more or sometimes twice more within the next 12 months, you'll be paying this rate, and they'll demonstrate the rate for all usage. So what they do is they're saying, okay, right now you're paying a certain rate based on your demand, okay?
Mm-hmm.
These peak demands, okay, if it happens repeatedly, your rate basically triples.
So it's not just a one-time charge, it's a change in
Correct.
our rate.
Right, exactly right.
Until they, excuse me for one,
So what they're saying is, if you repeatedly have a demand charge, which we would if we were running it all the time, you know, under the way it's set up right now, with no improvements, our rates would triple.
you ever call to reset the demand meter? Have you ever called them to reset the demand meter?
I think they do every month.
I was just gonna say, I know I used to have to do that call
Yeah.
when I have a spike or something.
We don't do that, they do that.
Yeah, but your demand is running as long as it's peaking.
As long as it runs.
As long as it's running, you're getting charged at higher rate.
Well, when they choose to do that,
Yeah,
first they send you a warning, Okay, and they'll give you a certain time period. If it happens again, you're gonna be paying a different rate, a higher rate.
And when they're talking about a higher rate, they're not just talking about a higher rate at the Cox tank, they're talking about a higher rate period.
System-wide.
Where they're talking about the higher rate for that particular location.
Okay, so the Cox pumping station would, that'd be at a higher rate than everything else we got going.
Right, assuming we had no peak demands anywhere else.
If it's metered that way.
This control center that is the CIP request to put into the Cox system, does that, what happens then? Does that mean that we leave all the pumps on and the control center takes care of it, or we still have to manually go out?
Well, it depends how, I mean, you can program anything you want into SCADA if you put the software and the hardware in. You know, basically like Randy said, we're not in danger, nothing's gonna fail tomorrow there, but you know, you look at some of the stuff that's there from the early 70s. So things are getting old, I mean, they're older. Everything still works, but eventually things will get older, and when they do fail, parts are harder to find and they're more expensive.
But the things you're talking about, the $85,000 in the CIP request, that is for a control center at the Cox tank, correct?
Yes.
It's not to change the motor so that they run at a variable speed, because what controls the speed they run at is the control center, correct?
Well, that could be done within that, yes. So the pumps would still be there and the motors would still be
The
there.
same pumps that are there now,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so the $85,000 is to replace the control center.
Right, or put one in there, because there's not one in there. All there is in there right now is just breakers, big throw switches.
So there's no control center at Cox at all right now?
Not for those pumps, it's just breakers. So you kick the breakers on. The only other controls that would be run through there for the filling of the Northwoods tank, that's done electronically through our SCADA. But that's not really a motor control center. That's just a computer control for level.
Okay.
What is it gonna save us by getting this?
As far as monetary,
Yeah, monetary and work-wise and, you know.
monetary would be more for work-wise, it would be, you would have more reliability in your system. You know everything's gonna work. Everything would be newer. If it is programmed in there where you don't have to throw the switch, I mean, and put the hardware and stuff in there for that, you can do that too. We're still gonna get called out. You're still gonna get called out, because if something like that kicks on, that means that there's a problem somewhere. You know, that's still gotta be addressed and identified.
Yeah, it's not, the motor control center upgrade's not being recommended as a cost savings measure. It's not a cost savings measure. It may result in avoidance of peaking charges, but the main thing is it's a reliability factor in the Cox tank. You know, the ability to start at a lower speed, not just on off, and to manage those pumps a little better electronically that's a savings in itself. The pumps last longer. The main issue is the reliability factor. That is our largest tank, our primary tank, and that is the one we rely on when we have a problem elsewhere in the system. So, it's a reliability issue in the system. That's the main reason for it.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is when you put the new control center into Cox, this $85,000 control center, from that point forward, the pumps are left on and the control center operates them, or do we still operate them the same way we do today?
I mean, it could be programmed in, it could be set up like that. You know, I'm not privy to how they do it. I mean, I'm not an electrician and engineer and all that kind of stuff, but.
My understanding is that the motor control center, if it's upgraded, it will have the capability of being programmed to modulate those pumps when the SCADA system or any of the other systems demand the water. It'll be able electronically to do it. So I guess in answer to your question, Dave, I would expect that it would be left in the on situation, the automatic situation. But that doesn't preclude that when something happens in the system, either at the well field or at the Chapel Ridge tank or wherever else, somebody is still going to have to go to the Cox tank to analyze why it's being called, why it's being demanded.
And I'm not questioning that. I guess I'm just going back to we're calling it an automatic system, but it's off.
Well, right now it is, because it's not an automatic system.
It's automatic to fill
Once
up
it's
the
on.
Northwoods tank once it's on. Otherwise, it's not automatic. It has to be manually
Yeah,
turned
it's
on.
controlled by valves once it's running.
Then you just said it a minute ago about when your Cox is running, you shut off the well house and the Chapel Ridge. Is that a manual shut off, or is it, you do
You
it?
know, so if we're working, if this system is running because of Chapel Ridge, we will manually have the tank shut off because we have to, we're doing work there. So usually, yes, it is a manual shut off, for any one of these. This one would not be manually shut off because the control valves are already shut off there. The well pumps aren't running.
Right. Yeah, I guess, the question about automatic versus non-automatic, I mean, it's like I guess if I had to equate it to something, I'd equate it to cruise control in your car. When it's on, it's automatic. When it's not turned on, it doesn't work. Well, that's the situation we got with the Cox tank. Once the breaker, basically, it's the old butter knife kind of thing. It's an up or down. It's either connected or it's not connected. Once it's connected, then the system operates the demand of the water. But it has to be turned on, first of all, to have that be done. Right now, under the current system, with what's being proposed, and you certainly can say no. I mean, you can say you don't want to fund it. That's perfectly within your right. It's his right, Kirk's right, to bring that to your attention that this is something that he believes as a system manager is needed at some point, 3 years from now, is what he's projecting to replace it, but to fund it over a 3-year period. So, I mean, it rests with the board whether we do this or not. But it's his responsibility to bring it to your attention. And basically what we're dealing with is, they say, it's not necessarily for a cost savings, although cost savings is an offshoot of it because we would avoid the peaking charges. But the main thing is the reliability of the system and the ability to continue to make sure that everywhere in our system we're able to provide the water, which is one of the primary things that we have to do. I mean, that is our responsibility, is to provide the water for fire protection and for public use.
Well, Lenny, why can't you just leave it on? Why does it have?
Well, because then the two systems would kind of be fighting each other.
They'd be fighting each other, trying to balance out.
So, I mean, because that's basically, we're running well water is coming into the Northwoods tank too. So if we left them both on, then yeah, they would be kind of fighting each other. The way it's set up right now, because there just is it's not programmed, there's nothing in there to say, to do this or do not do that. That's why we got to do it manually.
And that's not saying the system couldn't be changed
Right.
to do that, but that's going to be more expensive than replacing the motor control system.
Well, I deal with peaking charges every day at my workplace, because if we don't set the pumps correctly, we'll get a peaking charge. And I've heard the low estimate is $5,000 in one occurrence. So we're pretty particular in which pumps we run, because if we load up one side of our plant, the boss isn't going to be too happy when we have a $5,000 bill for a peaking charge, and it's probably increased since the rates have went up. So we have to be very careful in the township, and not only at our place, but the city's water pumping stations, they fight the same thing. They've put variable speed drives in their pumping stations to avoid that peaking charge, because it gets very expensive fast. Their Lincoln pump station, they don't run right now because it's very expensive. When the pumps come on, they get a peaking charge there. And, $5,000 every occurrence adds up over a period of time. So I think the motor control upgrades are needed as soon as possible.
Well, you're kind of talking about two different things. You're saying
Not-
that there's
not
a
really.
fee, there's a $5,000 fee for the city to do that, and he's saying that it's more, they're explaining, it's more the peak change, yeah.
Well, they hit you with that, but yeah, it increases your rates too. They hit you,
So
it's a double fee, really.
Of the-
They hit you with the peaking charge, and then that raises your average up and you pay more.
So I'm getting the feeling that we've never actually paid a peaking charge.
Have we?
No, we have not. That's,
That's a good thing.
and, like Lenny said, we're kind of sidetracked on this peaking charge. We're doing this for reliability and safety reasons, okay? It's the electrical system for the Cox pumps is totally outdated. It's outlived its useful life. So even what we've got could fail at any time. Okay, now is that urgent? I wouldn't say it's urgent like it's gonna happen today, but it could happen at any time. And plus, you're talking about the extra cost. It's not gonna save money, but the the savings would be, okay, if those pumps are running, like Lenny said again, there's a reason they're running. We don't want them running, except in an emergency. But when they do run, obviously we're gonna, even if the rate stays the same without a peaking charge, we're gonna be paying the current high rate, because obviously use is more costly than no use, right? So in addition to that, we're paying for more city water, which costs more than it's costing us now, just the quantity. We pay by the gallon. The more gallons we pay or use, the more it costs. So that's, we're avoiding extra costs, basically. But it's reliability and safety is the main reason.
A bigger issue. At our October 26th work session, when we discussed this whole thing, we asked specifically, are the pumps on, is the automatic system on at the Cox tank? And we were told 2 or 3 times that it is, after we finally got you to answer the question. And it turns out that there is no automatic system at the Cox tank, that it's only the pumps at the Cox tank.
Well, see, and this is where everything gets confused, is because when the pumps are on, they operate automatically when they're on. So the answer is yes, there's an automatic system when they're turned on, and that's what he said. That was the answer to the question. When they're on, they run automatically.
The question was, is the automatic system, are the pumps on at the Cox tank? The answer was yes. And in reality, the pumps are not on at the Cox tank, and there's no automatic system on at the Cox tank.
Until it's turned on.
Until it's turned on by somebody. Somebody has to go out and physically turn it on. That was the question. That's why I'm wondering why we were given the answer we were given. It's fairly easy to understand this system and to go along with the upgrade that's being requested. I just don't understand why we got the answer we got on Friday.
Well, the answer that you got in October was an answer to the question. The question was never asked, are the pumps turned on or off? That question was never asked until after the meeting. What Kirk answered the question was is that the question was, is it an automatic system? And the answer is yes. When the pumps are turned on, they automatically operate. But they have to be turned on to operate. And he clarified that it was a he characterized it as a semi-automatic.
I went back and listened to the tape from that work session meeting, and we were told at least twice towards the end of that discussion.
All right, I guess, where are we going with this? I mean, you know, if you guys don't want to fund the motor control system, then just deny it. Fine, it's not a problem. He's brought it to your attention that he, in his opinion, as the manager, it's necessary in 2021.
I'm not arguing whether we fund the system or not. I am arguing why we get the information we get out of Public Works. I'm dissatisfied with the information that comes out.
Well, I understand that, but realistically, that's why we're having this meeting today, because there is a difficulty in communication in answering questions, because they're not being understood, apparently, what the question is or what the answer is. So that's why I have the folks here today to ask the questions, to clarify it for the board members as much as possible so we can move forward in the budget process.
My understanding of the question, and I know the answer that Dave said, but Kirk was thinking of it once he had it on, it is automatic. I'm wondering if that's where he was at the time. I don't know. But I think we should move on.
Well, I don't think, nobody's here to try and mislead the board. And if that's the impression, then we need to have a serious conversation.
Well, that's definitely the impression I got.
Do the other board members have that same impression? If it is, then we need to have a conversation.
I thought they were on. I didn't understand it either, because.
I think after we understand what's happening now, you know, I think we should just move on. He could have didn't hear the question completely, or in his mind, it is on if you turn it on. And he said that we have to send a person out there to turn it on.
Well, and that's where the safety issue comes in, because actually flicking that switch or lever or whatever it is causes a spark.
That's
Well, it
part of
could.
That's why I said, why can't we just leave it on? But I understand now why you can't.
And you know, I've thrown this out there before, but I mean, when I'm at work, I'm always available if anybody ever wants to come over and actually look at, you know, what we're talking about. Sometimes it helps when you're actually right there, instead of, you know, looking at graphics, you're actually looking at what we're talking about. And then a lot of that stuff makes a lot more sense. But, you know, if I'm at work, by all means, I'm available. If somebody wants to go out and look at something, it's no problem, you know. And we're always happy to do that.
You know, and don't misunderstand, we can leave Cox turned on. We can leave it turned on. If that's what the board wants to do, we can leave it turned on and not have to worry about a motor control system.
Board
But
should
we'll
not
have
have
to-
that information.
But we'll have to pay
Board should not
the
make
cost
that
of doing
decision.
that.
It's not up to us.
That's not, we're not engineers, and we're not
think
working with the
anybody's-
water.
Then why are we having this conversation if it's up to Kirk?
I think that
We have to understand the system a little bit.
Well, I understand that.
It's a difficult system, but I think some of the frustration from the last few meetings is that we're not understanding the information we're getting. And we want to be able to make good decisions.
I don't
We're
believe-
spending lots of
I don't
money.
believe Kirk is explaining it the way that he should be explaining it. I can understand Lenny much better when he's explained it. Kirk, I don't know if it's just the way that he talks, and I have a hard time understanding how he's explaining it. But I got a lot more clearer view tonight from Lenny and understanding on how, I wasn't here on the 26th, but on how the whole thing is operating.
So that's, I think, the frustration level as we continue with the discussion of the Public Works budget, is how do we get beyond this?
After three
Yeah.
meetings, we
Maybe not as a
understand,
discussion
after
for
3
tonight.
meetings, we understand it has to be manually pushed on, and it becomes automatic after that.
Well, you know, you're dealing with a system that's been in operation for 45 years. I mean, some of it is 45 years old, some of it's 5 years old. And it's not all at the same technological level. And that's what we're running into. We're running into incompatibilities just like we do with our laptops, just like we do with our desktops, everything else. At some point, your laptop and desktop will not run the current programs, and you have to upgrade. That's what we're dealing with at the Cox Pump House. It's 45 years old. It is not capable of being upgraded to do what it needs to do now for us to efficiently, effectively, and reliably operate that system. That's why the recommendation has been made to replace the motor control system.
Somehow that has to have been conveyed better. And I think going forward, that's what we have to consider, whatever that means, whether it's presentations.
Well, we schedule visits to the facilities and we don't get board members coming. So, I
No,
mean,
that's not the issue. It's how this budget is being presented. We know that we've spent hours and hours and hours talking about Public Works, and I think some of the struggle is that the information's not getting through. I don't know if we're all not thinking the same way, or obviously you've got a better knowledge because you work with it all the time.
Well, the thing is I understand it because I'm a utility person.
So you're
I don't
the
have the
one.
level, I don't know what all the other board member levels are. I mean, Kirk explains things well, I understand them well for me. I don't know about Dave, I don't know about the rest of them, but my comfort level is very good with that. And I think we should move on because you pick your battles, this isn't one of them.
well, and it's difficult for staff because we're spending an awful lot of time trying to answer the questions that are being asked at the meetings and at the various sessions, and we're getting conflicting directions from individual board members. I mean, we're getting questions, we're getting answers, we provide the answers, some of it gets distributed, some of it doesn't. You know, so we're frustrated as well. We've spent an awful lot of time on this. So Kirk has a tremendous amount of time
Is
putting
it-
these
is it
budgets
funded?
together.
Is it funded,
Is what funded?
the controls?
You haven't approved the budget yet.
I mean, he is.
It's in the budget.
All right.
Well, that's the request that's in the budget, is to fund it over 3 years. If the board doesn't want to do that, then say no, and it'll be out of the budget.
For $85,000, I think
Yeah.
we should just move on.
Make the
You
motion.
got a question? Or-
Yeah, as far as understanding, it's difficult when you don't work with something on a day-to-day basis and that, on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis and that. And every time we have these meetings and that, more information comes out to us and you get a better understanding of that. One of the things that came up to me on the automatic system here is that you have the control system and it kicks in automatically for whatever reason on the new system. Comment with me that you still have to contact someone that this kicked in. Now, that means you're gonna have to send someone down there to check it out.
Well, it's always the case.
No, let me think. If it's that automatic system, and it's a computerized generated system, you should be able to do with a little laptop or something, wherever you're at, to get on, take a look at it and see what happened. You don't have to go down there anymore. You should be able to do it anywhere. But the one fear I have is that, how do you connect that information to wherever you're at without being hacked into and controlling something else. It gets back to me in a security issue at the same time and that.
Sure.
But those are things we can work through and that.
Well, we do, and to clarify what happens, when something, as Lenny mentioned, when a pump comes on someplace, they get an alarm, and he can go electronically and look to see what's happening at what pump, and if it's something that requires a call-out, then someone gets called out to go look at it and address it. It may just be a reset of a switch or something, but it may be a failed valve, and at that point, then you have to make a decision system-wide on what you have to do to respond to that failed valve. Whether it's to cut a piece of the system off and to start up the Cox tank is a decision that whoever the person that gets the call, who happens to be on call at that time, gets. So, yeah, it's, everything is recorded. It's electronic. We have a SCADA system. That's what it does. It manages the system electronically. So when an alarm goes off, yes, they get noticed. You get a page, or is it a call? Yeah, over the pager. Whoever's on call is carrying a pager. So whatever piece of equipment is subject sends a signal to the pager to alert them that something's happening. So then they look to see what's happening.
I think if you have that way, then individuals that are going on call for that type of situation have to have the knowledge to be able to understand what they're seeing in front of them and that too. So it creates another concern in that, the technical concern of those individuals who are going to be on call, because you don't have to have everyone like that, but who knows?
Yeah, Lenny's the water operator, but he's not on call 24/7, all the time. So, the call rotates. The call rotates,
Right.
and all the service workers are capable of taking a look at that system and intervening, basically. And if something they don't feel they can do, Lenny's called.
Well, let's do this. We know we have to talk about this again. We don't have to approve this tonight. It's part of the budget. This was an informational session set up by staff to try to give us what we're looking for. I'm just thinking we need to schedule another work session. I can't be at this one tomorrow. I have to leave town. And you were already asked about rescheduling, so we can do that later in the meeting, but that's my recommendation. If you've got something else to add, that's fine.
I would just like to summarize my comments a little better, and as a member of this board, and we're considering capital improvement projects in relation to a budget, it's my responsibility to ask questions so I can justify any money that's being spent, and that's what I'm doing, is asking questions. What I don't think I'm getting sometimes is I don't think I'm getting a straightforward answer. It's becoming very apparent that I'm not. That's a whole separate issue. But I have a responsibility to ask questions with regards to where the money's being spent and justifying that the money's being spent appropriately, because somebody has to pay for that. We're looking at it, we're already considering rate increases for this year. It's my responsibility, as well as everybody else's responsibility on this board, to ask questions about why do we want to put this in. The same reason we ask questions about the Grove Street, or the water project out off of Grove Street.
Grandview.
Those are the reasons you ask those questions, because you have to justify it in your own mind that kind of an expense is warranted. I've been fine with this motor control center since the work session. What annoys me is the lack of information that comes out, or if, in my opinion, it's the misinformation that comes out about a straightforward question. And that's all I have.
But my question for Dave is, what happens if I understand it and you don't? How do you solve that? What's the answer?
Ask me.
I didn't think that I understood. I thought maybe I heard it wrong, and I went back and listened to the tape of that work session twice.
Well, it'd just be like, in your previous work, you're an airline pilot, and you could probably tell me a lot of things about airplanes that I don't know and I wouldn't understand, and you'd be very comfortable with it, and I wouldn't be.
I don't think we want to belabor it here tonight, but the question was asked, is it on? The answer was given yes.
And I went back and listened to it, and he did say it was on. But after listening to the rest of the conversation, I think in his head, he thought that after you turn it on, it's automatic. That's the only reason I could think of for the answer that we received.
But we have to overcome it somehow, because, I mean, when I understand things and someone else can't understand it or struggles with it,
And if I don't understand it, it's incumbent upon me to ask questions until I do. That's why I'm here.
And we all have to understand, that's the problem. You've got 7 different minds here, and we have to be able to incorporate it and make a good decision.
I think we understand it more so now than we did before.
Well, maybe this is what we need, more visuals or somebody else to explain it or something, because we've struggled with this for years.
The next time we have somebody from, in this depth of conversation, I think the person should have a mic on them and not depend on that one right there, because it's kind of hard to hear on this side, you know, so.
Are we good on this for right now? Yes? Thank you, guys. We appreciate it. Computer went to sleep. We were talking so long. Community linkage. It looks like we don't have anything specific on there, but if anybody's hearing something from the residents that they want to share, this is a good time to do it. So just remember that for every meeting. Or you can always give it to me ahead of time. We can put it on the agenda.
Push your button.
Oh, sorry, Randy. Go ahead.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank the residents that came out and voted yesterday, and particularly to thank the residents for the support that they gave the fire department and our law enforcement, as well as the library.
I guess that's a pretty direct way of hearing, isn't it? I hadn't thought of that. Thank you.
The only other comment I heard, and we looked at it today, is the intersection of Vanderboom and Fair Avenue. What a rotten job that was.
Yeah, I went out and looked at it again, too. Randy's working on that. He's made
I do,
3 or 4
just want to
phone
say,
calls.
you know,
It's bad.
that's not only my option, but also other people has told me that.
And we are endeavoring to try and get that fixed. I've been in communication with the road commission, and they characterize it as a temporary repair, and I've advised them that it's not an acceptable temporary repair.
Thank you.
Especially when the plows start. And no more lights?
Too late for anything to happen this year now.
Yeah, that's why they said
Repair,
temporary.
it'll never happen.
Plant's closed down, I think.
Yep, by the 15th, for sure.
Number 8 is recommendation for Lions Field ice rink roof or synthetic ice. Who will talk about that? I thought maybe Jason would be. Randy, and you know something about it?
Yeah, I did talk with Jason. He thought that one of the committee members was going to be speaking to it, but so I think it's pretty straightforward. The board had previously referred to the Planning Commission and its Recreation Committee to take a look at the Lions Field Recreation Area ice rink and determine what might be the best or reasonable solutions to extend the skating season. One of the things we've been talking about for quite a while is a roof. Another thing we've been talking about for not quite as long, but still quite a while, is the potential for a different kind of an ice surface, an artificial ice surface. And you have before you a recommendation from the Planning Commission. Recommend that the Planning Commission consider adding a roof over the ice rink as grant funding and matching funds become available. And I think that's basically an open-ended recommendation, as I read it, that if in fact we are able to locate available funding sources that we can afford to match, if there is a match required, that we go forward with either roof or artificial surface, whichever the board and planning commission determine to be the best choice.
Pete?
After looking at this, and the committee did discuss this in synthetic ice, you know, I started looking back and I said, this is a recreation area. It's not just an ice rink. It's not a, 6, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, or even 12 months ice rink. After watching what goes on at that ice rink, at the rink in the summertime, with all the different things that's happening with the kids and that, I think I'm not in favor of the ice year-round. I'm more in favor of doing what we are right now, opening up to the people that can take their kids in there. And I think if you go over there during the day, you'll see a lot of that. And I think that's important because it's a community recreation area, and I think we try to do the best we can in the wintertime to keep the ice. In the summertime, we open up to the rest of the people who don't skate and have the kids that do other things in there, so.
Pickleball.
You knew he wanted to say
I don't want to
that.
say that.
Dave, you're-
No, I'm good. Pete got it.
Okay. Randy?
Well, I did attend the last planning commission meeting, and they were talking about this, and I did speak to it, and I have some of the same thoughts trustee LaRue and trustee Wiegand had. And I just said, also too, with that roof in the summer, you could have even like a farmer's market or something in there. Or, some event in there even, with that roof would would be helpful. I just said the problem is where are we gonna find the money like everywhere else, so. That's the only issue.
So do we want to did you have a question first?
I think just comment as far as trustee LaRue and them, follow them up, and after looking at this and thinking about it, that I felt that ice rink is fine during the winter. There's too many activities that can go on non-winter time that would benefit the whole community in that. And I think putting artificial ice in there, you have a smaller group of individuals who would be utilizing it, rather than keeping it open for community whole as a use, I think. I think that's been my feeling in that too. So.
You could have a yoga class even,
Especially with the roof, that would be even easier.
Who's gonna get down and get us up, Pete?
So do we
Not a
want
front end loader.
to pass the recommendation back down to planning to research grants, or we want to do this now?
I just think that, and I would be willing to make a motion to move forward with the request and move forward as grant funding allows, and we're able to fund.
So they can look into whatever funding might be available or grants and bring us something back.
And the key is able to fund.
And if they want to pass it back down to the rec committee, then they can. So we'd first direct the planning commission.
Are you talking about a cover for the area?
That would be a roof, yeah.
If that's the motion you're making.
Yeah, the recommendation is for adding a roof over the ice rink as grant funding and matching funds become available. And I wouldn't have a problem with that motion as they sent it up, basically.
It's gotta come back to us anyway.
It's just giving them direction to do something. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
We're targeting a roof.
Yes.
Yes. 8B is considered TF 17-0209, amended US 41 underpass project agreement resolution request.
Yes, and I did speak with Jason about this, and I did tell him he didn't need to be here tonight. This is pretty straightforward. As you'll recall, we had originally put in a grant request for $300,000 with a $75,000 match. The award was for $225,000, still with a $75,000 match. They have come back and reconsidered and have put it back to $300,000. So all that is being requested of the board is to adopt a new resolution to be submitted to accept the $300,000. Same match,
It's just because it changed. we have to
because
do
they
it.
changed from 225 to 300,000, which is what we originally had requested.
So we just need a motion, or did you have a question?
Just have a question. Can you, how do I say it? The $75,000, we've got that set aside, or we're going to find it?
We have it. That's not township dollars. That was from the public funding.
Okay, that's all.
So moved.
I was just gonna
Support.
say, so you were making a motion. Okay, Dan and Dave.
Dave and
Anything-
Dan.
Anything else? Any other questions? We don't,
Pretty
we're not gonna
straightforward.
read the resolution?
No, well, the resolution will be, it's in the packet and it will be in the minutes as stated, so I don't,
Okay. We need a roll call.
yes. Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Everson,
Yes.
trustee LaRue,
Yes.
treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
clerk Rattari is yes, and supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0 and 1 absent.
Okay. 8C is Pilt for Whetstone Village Apartments, 2000 Whetstone Road. Payment in lieu of taxes is what Pilt stands for.
Right. This will be very brief. Dulcie and I have met with the folks. These are the individuals that manage the Whetstone Village Apartments. As you recall, part of that is in the township, part of it is in the city. They have been granted payment in lieu of tax status from the city of Marquette, and they are asking that the township do the same thing. They will be coming to your December 4th meeting to make a presentation to you. We have looked at this previously. I think 2015 was the last time we looked at it. The board will be, I'll provide the board the information from that meeting as well, the board meeting where you addressed it previously. So they will be coming back on December the 4th. They do know they have to provide us their supporting information prior to the board meeting the Thursday before, so it'll be in your packets. You'll have the opportunity to review it before they come to speak with you.
Any questions for Randy?
Treasurer Johnson?
Not right now.
I remember talking about this. All right, committee updates. Maybe to Dave?
Yeah, just a couple of them. The Planning Commission, their October 24th meeting, they set a public hearing for a special use permit for a short-term rental at 400 County Road 550. And the property is owned, the applicant's name is Kevin Thompson. And the public hearing is set for November 14th at 7 p.m. and there's already a couple other ones that are set for that same day. So there'll be 3 public hearings on November the 14th. And let's see, we got the commission consider the recommendation for the rec committee. We've already taken action on that. And finally, in consideration of increases in grant availability for improvement of pedestrian connectivity and non-motorized pathways, the commission is considering text amendment recommendations that will better position the township to expand our non-motorized network. It would end up being a text amendment change. I'm sure it's a year down the road by the time we get done vetting this whole process.
Because there's funding available, is that what you're saying?
There's different sources of funding that's available for it now that weren't available for it before. But there's a whole legal ramification that has to be worked out. The road committee tonight was their meeting. The bulk of that will be at our November 29th or 20th meeting, but we did our road tour today of the recommended maintenance for next year. There'll be a recommendation coming back to the Planning Commission from our road committee December 4th meeting to move forward on the engineering and recommendations for next year, so we can get it out for bids quicker.
It's going to planning on the 4th or us on the 4th?
It will come out of the rec committee on the 4th, and we'll go to planning after that. This is not in a big rush because we're not going to bid it out until sometime in January or February anyway. If you remember, this year's didn't get out to bid until later, almost just prior to the construction season, and that put us on the bottom of the list. We're trying to get on the top of the list this time. And from the rec committee on their October 16th meeting, the bulk of the rec committee meeting was spent on the recreation plan and the amendment and the submittal of the Planning Commission. Mike made a presentation on that tonight. And then we come out with the final recommendation that went to the Planning Commission for the ice rink. And other than that, that's it.
Questions for Dave? Okay. 9B is committee appointments. You have a memo and the list, which is kind of duplicated, but that's okay. The memo gives you the breakdown. What I'm discovering on some of these is, and I checked with Roger to make sure, some of these committees have to have staggered terms, and some are even or odd year terms, and the alternates actually have to have a different term length than the regular board members, so it's a lot more. I told Randy tonight I'm spending tons of time just figuring out the committees. But these are the recommendations I'm making for tonight. I already have one that I'll give you for the next meeting. And I think then I just have 2 open positions, I'm not real sure, but at some point, we're gonna have to change these terms, and we'll have to get back with the people who might be expiring in 19 or 20, that it has to be an odd year term, so I'm gonna worry about that later. And some of these people are just doing 1-year terms, because even though it's a 2-year, it's gotta be an odd year date. So, these are my recommendations. We have 2, 3, 4 renewals. We've got a couple people changing committees. I don't know if you've gotten all of the backup information. Some of them didn't make actual applications. Some of them just sent emails. I have copies of all those. They're just saying, yes, I'd like to renew. 'Cause I know you said you wanted something, you know, to look at. I did give you the applications that I had. So I can either make the motion that we appoint all these.
I move to
And if you
concur
want me
with the
to-
supervisor's recommendation for the committee's recommendations as presented to the board.
A support.
Do you feel it's necessary to read them aloud?
Well, the only issue I have, and I don't know if Roger, you can do this, I know if the terms are gonna be staggered, can we even appoint them right now without changing them, or, that's my question.
Everybody's agreed to what's here so far.
Okay, but
I'm worrying about the staggered later.
staggered later. I mean, are we in violation if we appoint them now without staggering? That's my question.
That's a good question.
You can just make the motion to appoint them to the appropriate term, and we can then figure out which ones, because there were a couple of them, they should all be ending at year end, essentially, regardless of whether it's an even year term or an odd year term or a staggered term. But some of them are on the list as ending in May or July. And I suspect what happened, I don't know, but I'm just guessing, that you had a vacancy for a while, and somebody agreed in May to fill that vacancy, and then someone jotted down that their term began in May, when really their term was for the remainder of that 3-year or 2-year position.
That's what we're thinking too, because it's.
So you can just, I think it would be appropriate to make the motion to, for the people to be appointed and to the appropriate term in compliance with either the bylaws of the committee or by statute. Many of these are statutory appointments, so our hands are tied as to what the appropriate term is anyway.
Should we, once that's totally firm, should we bring that back and have like a correcting motion, or should we just go ahead and, that's why I typed it this way, so that we'd have a record and we'd know, that staff would know when they update this every year what the term is.
I'm not sure that you actually will need a motion, because you will be appointing them to fulfill whatever term, and a couple of them, for example, that we had discussed, and this is now over a month ago, so I don't remember specifically which ones, but some of them were for resignations, so the replacements wouldn't be for a new 3-year term, for example, they would just be for the duration of that unexpired term. And they are what they are, either by statute or by township records, so we can just sit down and figure out what that is, and the motion can be to complete it for the duration, for the appropriate term, and we can determine exactly what that is and notify the individuals that they have been appointed for this term with this expiration date.
I don't have a problem with that. I think that's appropriate. And then when we do figure out what term they have, we'll come back with an informational memo from the supervisor where they are,
Yep.
just so then they know.
Okay.
I know you're talking about appointments, but B1 there's actually a resignation in there too.
Well, I didn't know if we needed to put that in there, because I've got another one for the next meeting too. Because a couple of these people are switching committees,
I understand. But
so.
does the board need to accept their resignation? Is that, or is it just?
Yeah, I already
Planning
did
commission, yeah.
to them, but I guess the board would have to too.
never really accepted them in the past.
No.
We just got them and that was it.
Well, not planning commission. Planning commission, remember, Mr. Pelto had to put in a written resignation?
Yes, he
Yeah,
did.
planning commission, you
Probably-
do have to have a written
And
resignation.
that was before his
Okay.
term was up, though.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Mr. Place is resigning before his term is up.
Right, and he did put, I thought I put that in there, I have.
Yep.
I have his written. Okay, well, and that's why I put it on there. So I guess, do you want a separate motion?
Yes, you'd have to have the resignation, accept the resignation motion first before you move forward. So I guess I'll move to accept the
We
resignation.
have a motion on the floor already.
Well, I didn't second it, so really you don't have one.
Yeah, we don't have a second yet. Okay,
So I'll move to accept the resignation of Mr. Place on the Planning Commission, effective, I think it's immediately, right?
he said the end of the year.
Okay, so
Yeah,
the end of this year.
so I think he's got couple more meetings or something.
Support.
We're good? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then you want to do a second one, or?
If the treasurer wants to make his previous motion.
Is this all set, so I know what we're talking about now?
So it's just the appointments.
Okay, I move to concur with the supervisor's recommendation for the 2019 committee recommendations.
I'll support that with the appropriate terms.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thought I looked.
You realize that the appointment of Mr. Heikkinen to the Planning Commission creates a vacancy on the ZBA, correct?
Yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I got a question for Roger. When Mr. Place is resigning, the person that takes his place for the end of the year does not jeopardize that if he runs again, the 3-year term, correct?
I'm not sure I'm following the question.
Mr. Place is going to be retire. He's going to resign. We're going to need somebody to replace him for, say, example, 2 months, 3 months, whatever.
No, he's,
Well, if he's,
For a full year.
if-
He's going
if
through the end of
he's-
the year.
Oh, he's going to the end of this year.
right, his resignation
So you're
that you just
talking-
accepted is effective December 31 of 2018. So depending on what the duration of that term is, the replacement will fill the balance of that term.
And then if he decides to run again, he can still have the 3-year full.
Yes, because all he's doing is filling
Yeah.
Greg's
Okay.
term.
and we'll figure those out when we get the,
It's a 3-year term, and it should be for regular 3 years.
The Chairman of the Planning Commission looks confused.
Oh,
You cannot resign.
well, come to the
point of order?
microphone.
Go
for
ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to interrupt. Mr. Heikkinen has been here all night long. You might want to introduce him and welcome him to the Planning Commission. So thanks, Steve.
Since we just made the appointment, and get through all that first. Do you want to come up and say something? Absolutely.
Not actually public comment yet, but
Okay.
we're
that's
there,
fine.
getting there.
Well, if you have any questions then for me, I'd be happy to answer them. I've been on the planning, the ZBA, I think had 3 terms on there. It kind of runs for quite a while. But I've been I was a land surveyor, professional land surveyor for 17 years in one of my previous careers. And so I did a lot of zoning, a lot of planning, site plan work. I'm a whiz with site plans, so if there's any other questions on site plan reviews, I've done a lot of those as well. I think Marquette Township is right on the cusp of having a great deal of development, and I want to be part of assisting the township and providing any expertise I have in that regard. I want to thank the board for allowing me to take a stab at being on the planning commission. I hope I do a good job. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I'll add in, I was on the ZBA for a short stint with Steve, and I thought he did a very good job, and I think he'll be a plus to the Planning Commission.
I appreciate that a great deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Okay, we're good on that? Public comment, we're close, anyway.
Okay, just so you know, we did on your adding sergeant in place to the ZBA, correct? Because you added that. That's not, so that will be done too, correct?
What was in the agenda did not mirror the memo,
Okay,
and it should have been. The memo is what's already been confirmed with the people that are listed there.
okay, because I just want to do that so if someone's following the meeting online and look at the agenda and they don't see that.
Well, we amended the agenda.
Yeah.
So it won't be in.
Well, this so they understand.
Yep.
We get to that point.
That's good. Okay, now public comment? If we have any public that wants to comment? Okay. No? Absolutely. Sure, come on up to the podium so we can all hear you. Name and address, please.
My name is Gail Rosavi, and I live at the Whetstone community. It's the first time I've ever been to a board meeting, and it's interesting to watch the dynamics, and I appreciate all your comments. I just have a suggestion in hearing all this for the first time, so it's new to me, so I'm not emotionally involved, and anytime we do research on any projects in our lifetime, we take ownership in it because we care, and I hear all of that from all of you, that you all care. And my suggestion to you in regards to the motor control system, as I wrote it down, because I'd never heard that term before, I would maybe suggest that all of you, the next time you have another planning meeting, is you actually go to this location that we're talking about and have your meeting there so you can see it in operation and maybe perhaps generate more questions there. I know I myself am a very visual person, and to see things written down is one thing, but once you see it in person, it puts it into a different perspective. So as a member of the public, that would be my suggestion for you. Thank you all for sharing what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Some of us did go out to the well field. Some of us weren't able to get there, but so we're sort of familiar with the operation. Announcements? Anything to share? Manager's report.
You do have a printed report, and I just want to highlight a couple of things. Obviously, on November 27th, Tuesday the 27th of November, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, we'll be doing our annual Christmas tree lighting event at the Westwood Mall parking lot between Aspen Dental and Applebee's. The tree should be in motion, let's put it that way. Should be in motion sometime tomorrow and be up within the next day or so. In preparation for it. We have a meeting, the Community Events Committee has a final meeting on Monday where we'll be formalizing the poster for it and then distributing that. But everybody's invited. Again, Tuesday, November 27th, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. We'll be having our whole event. We'll be caroling. Santa will be there. We'll have the opportunity to go into the mall, and children of all ages will be able to talk with Santa about their lists, enjoy some food and some camaraderie, and it's a great time. So it's a good family event. Over the holiday season, township offices will be closed on several days. For the Thanksgiving observance, will be closed Thursday, November 22nd, and Friday, November 23rd. The office will not be open. For Christmas, it will be closed Monday, December 24th, and Tuesday, December 25th. And then for New Year's Day, Tuesday, January 1st, will be closed. As usual, on any of those dates, if you have any need for our on-call staff, which we are staffed on call for any kind of public works need or anything along those lines, simply call the office number 228-6220 and follow the prompts on the message to call out the on-call staff. Board budget process, we right now have the process established that we should be publishing the public hearing notice November 26th. That might be modified next Tuesday, depending if we're going to continue on. We may have to modify the schedule going forward, but the public hearing has to be published in a newspaper of general circulation at least 7 days prior to the public hearing. So that public hearing has to take place within a time frame of the actual meeting, the actual public hearing meeting. So notice has to be 7-day notice. So we may be amending that schedule that's on the document that you have in your packet, depending on what happens on Tuesday the 13th. If we have additional budget work sessions scheduled, then we'll have to modify the remaining schedule to meet the time frame. December 31st is the magic date. You have to have on file an adopted balanced budget by December 31. Lions Field Recreation Area, we have basically winterized Lions Field. The in-ground sprinkling system has been blown out. The ball field pavilion has been, water's been turned off and the line's blown out and locked up. The ice rink pavilion is still open. The ice rink is available for use. As Trustee LaRue has mentioned, it is used quite a bit during the day. The restrooms are available now until 5 o'clock. Due to the recent vandalism, we have been closing it at 5 o'clock, and I'll leave that to the board in terms of if you wish to continue at 5 o'clock or go back to leaving it open until 10. I'll leave that to you, and you can get back with me at a later date if you wish. But we would then be back in the situation of having staff coming back out to lock it up. The rink will remain open. The lights will be on until 10 o'clock. They'll automatically go off at 10, which is quiet hours. But the issue is, do we want to leave the ice rink pavilion unattended for that additional 5 hours? Let's see. You do have the minutes of the corridor committee. The last corridor committee scheduled. The next one will be coming up on October the 9th. I'm sorry, that was the October 9th you'll have. The next one, the minutes of the September 11th meeting are attached. And there is a ZBA meeting coming up, as Trustee Wiegand had mentioned, coming up on Tuesday, November 13th at 6 o'clock. Consider a dimensional variance. Any questions?
I'm hoping that the Grinch won't be here this year to.
Might be.
try to
Never
finish
know.
Christmas.
You never know. We do have the sheriff's department standing by just in
Good.
case.
I'm glad you scheduled that. Dave?
Question about moving that work session, do we need to make a motion tonight to do
Yeah, I
that?
was
You do.
gonna ask you. I probably should have done it in announcements. I have to do a funeral tomorrow, so sorry I have to postpone that meeting. Everybody said that they were available Monday or Tuesday next week.
With the exception of Trustee Marks.
We don't know what he's,
Not anymore.
not anymore. Oh, on Monday? Okay. Do we want to look at another time, or we need to cancel that first?
We can actually cancel, you can cancel it at any time, but to schedule one, you need to make a motion.
It'd be nice to, we might be able to wrap up Public Works, that's why I'm asking you that you not have the meeting without me. If it was just a normal meeting, I'd say go ahead, but I'll be gone till Saturday.
I think we could cancel tomorrow, have the one Tuesday. It's gonna be on video or on tape, you know, and you can listen, Dan, or you can listen to it. And, you know, if you got any questions, I guess you can shoot emails to the supervisor, who else. Because I'll have that back, you know, have it up right away, so if you have some time, you can watch it maybe or something.
Just happened at 4:30 tonight, so.
You said you were okay, otherwise I wouldn't have. So, Tuesday,
hear.
from 1 to 3 then?
Yeah, let me ask Roger, if I'm correct, you can cancel a meeting really at any time, you just gotta post it, right?
Correct.
But to schedule one, you gotta have a motion of the board, or the supervisor, the clerk could call one actually, a work session if they had to, but it's nice to do it here.
Correct.
So, so I'll go, so if we're gonna cancel tomorrow, am I correct in that? Okay, I'll do that tonight. I'll put that on the door that's canceled for tomorrow. I'll make a motion, we schedule a work session next Tuesday, and that's what, the 13th?
13th.
13th from 1 to 3 here to talk about Public Works / general fund, hopefully we get.
Randy, do you put on the bottom reschedule too, after, when you
No.
cancel this one?
No, it'll be a separate post. I can do that, but it's just usually, yes, I just do that as a separate posting.
And have them next to each other.
Yes.
Then will you email John or something?
I did. Yeah, I did email him.
So that is a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, I appreciate it. An unexpected funeral. Anything else for the manager? Okay, we can review motions.
Okay, tonight let me get there. Tonight we did the consent agenda, that was approved. Regular agenda was approved as amended. The resolution for the underpass, we approved. It was unanimous. The fourth motion of the evening was to accept the resignation of Mr. Place from the Planning Commission. And then the fifth motion was to accept the supervisor's appointments to the appropriate terms. And the sixth motion of the evening was to schedule the work session for next week.
Thank you. Anything anybody wants for a future agenda? Besides what seems to come up every week?
The Whetstone issue will be on the 4th.
And I'll have some more committee recommendations for the 20th. Board member comment. Ernie?
I have two. Talking to my son this afternoon, lives in Wisconsin, he brought up the dark stores and that. And how they do it in Wisconsin, they do it by counties. And there was a number of counties down there that passed the resolution asking the legislature to pass the required law to eliminate all loopholes, so that the stores would have to pay the actual amount in that. So I was surprised, but he's heard me talk about it enough, so he was aware of it at that point in time. So they're moving forward on that too. So the other question I have, this is kind of directed at the manager on the general fund, being that we passed the proposal for dollars for law enforcement, where that dollar is going to be directed. We should be able to free up some dollars in the budget at this point in time. So,
Yeah, Dulcie, our assessor will be doing an actual calculation, basically, of what that actual impact is, and then that'll be offsetting what's already currently budgeted for law enforcement. And then that'll free up whatever that dollar amount is to be available for the board to allocate,
Good.
whether it's fund balance or some other expenditure in the general fund.
someone's going to ask the question down there.
Sure.
We're gonna put it in the restricted funds.
Okay, I'll take care of it. You put it restricted there.
Okay, any other comments? Pete?
Then at the road committee meeting tonight, we're talking about, you know, I think the four of us rode around the township looking at the projects that were done, you know, a couple of years ago and planning for the next year. And I just thought to myself, going up and down, or picking around this, look at this, do that, we can plan it, and we're gonna have the money for it and part of the repairs, but how lucky we are, you know, that thing was passed with about 70-some% of it, and also with a maintenance, you know, fund to go along with it. You know, it's just unbelievable. That's over the years, we're used to fixing a road and let it go to heck and then, you know, start finding money, but I think we did it right, and I think we should be proud of the residents to vote something like that in, because they really care about what they're driving on, so. I just thought that was, you're riding up and I said, Jesus, you know, even though Dave was a terrible driver, but I mean, but it was just, I mean, you stop in the middle of the road and look at a crack, and Dave will explain it, you know, about the crack, the size, we've seen the different sizes of it, you know, overpass, and, you know, different projects, different ways of fixing it and fixing it right. And there's never a thought of just patching it. We want to make sure it's done right, because that's what the residents give us the trust to do something like that. But I just thought that was kind of great, you know.
It is, and
So-
when you have city officials coming to me and asking, you know, how did we do that, and could they do that? That's a pretty good pat on our back.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been fighting the road commission for how many years to just take care of what they've done, how many years ago and not. And here we are trying to take care of things that 3-4 years old, and, you know, and we got plans to do it, and we're continuing on going to do that, so. You know, it just struck me funny how lucky we are to have something like that, and we've done it, so.
Well, we created a model that was presented to the state, and the state was not interested in looking at it. You know, the state still has a problem. You know, it's a very simple solution. Instead of increasing people's taxes and increasing registration fees and all the other crazy things they've been talking about, simply take a position of saying, communities, if you'll pass a millage, we'll match it. Roads will be fixed.
And
Simple as that.
and
That's
I
all it
think
takes.
We should get back, like Dave said today, get back to this, 60/40 thing and with the county and just try to get things taken care of. The Commerce Road out here, they should have been working on that, several years ago,
60/40 plus 17%.
Yeah.
Well, and that, you gotta remember, that was in response to the questions we asked them, too. That was overwhelming. They wanted the roads fixed, they want them plowed, they want the dirt gone, they want the bushes off the side of the road, they want the roads taken care of. So, thanks to a few resourceful people, some on this board, you did it.
I'm just hoping the county starts looking at the intersection and the trees are falling down, stuff like that today.
Well, and Commerce Drive was not part of our project, but it needs work.
It does. It's part of their
So it's
project.
starting
I
to
wish
break-
they had assumed the same
starting to
position as we
break up.
do, yeah. Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay,
Want to share?
I'll go over the election stuff since it was yesterday. I'd just like to thank the voters for coming out. It was a very busy election, and I'd like to thank the poll workers and the people that worked. It was a long day. It was about 20 hours, 21 hours for us, starting at 6 in the morning and going home at 10:30 or 11 at night. So I'd like to thank those folks. And a couple of election statistics here. It was a very good attended election. It was almost equal to the last presidential election by numbers. So I'd like to thank the residents for coming out to vote and making their voice heard. We had 63% in the biggest in District 1, or Precinct 1, which is the north side of the highway, and we had 67% on the south side of the highway, which is Precinct 2. So that's a very good number considering it's a midterm. And as the manager alluded to, and the treasurer, our millage questions passed. And I got the percentages. The law enforcement millage question passed 63% to 37%, so that's a pretty good margin. The township fire millage passed 69% to 31%, and the library millage passed 72% to 28%. So kind of telltale numbers for me that the residents are supporting what we do. So I'd like to thank the residents for coming out and supporting the township board and trying to make your township a better place and, moving forward. So a couple hiccups that happened at the election. Actually, the election ran pretty smooth. The pinch point in the whole process, which I can't control, is the voting machine. The voting machine takes a lot longer for the ballots to go through. They used to go through instantaneously. The ballots now take, depending how big they are, take about 20 seconds to go through, or 25, because instead of it scanning it through, it actually, when it goes through now, it takes a picture of the whole ballot. It scans the ballot in. And they do that, the new machines do that for recount purposes. It's easier to recount them if they do that like that. So that's the whole pinch point in the process. We could get everyone registered and in to vote very quickly. It was just the voting machine that took the longest point in the whole process. So, but we got through it, and I'm glad everyone was patient. So,
How about the younger people, Rand? Did you get any?
Well,
is there the younger people?
I can't say we did have a lot of absentees, but I can't really say the age. It's kind of all over. But I did see a lot of people that I never seen voting before, so I guess that's a good thing.
Well, how many absentees?
Absentees, we had 416 in the big precinct and 282 in the other precinct. So that It's almost 700, so that's a pretty good number. So it's almost, we have about 3,200 registered voters in the township, so 700, you're about a fourth absentee. 1/4 is doing absentee right now. So with the recent proposal number 3 passing, which I don't know how the state's going to handle same-day voter registration. That's going to be very interesting to see how they do that. I don't understand how they're going to do that, but we'll see. There's going to be no reason absentee voting, so I think absentee voting will actually increase. Because it'll be, you can get a ballot absentee for no reason. So we'll see where that goes.
Thank you. Yes?
I worked the election, and it was interesting, it was continually coming through. A lot of individuals with kids coming through. I was real surprised, I had not seen that in the past in that. So they were out there.
Young kids,
Yeah.
yeah.
And one comment that was related to me, one individual came up and indicated that they were born in 1943, and this was the first time they've ever voted. I couldn't believe it, and I asked the question, they said, no, that's what this individual said. So, I don't know, I just got to thinking, what's causing these people to come out and vote all of a sudden, something like that? Something was causing them to happen, and that, so, I don't know.
I'm glad they did. Even if they voted contrary to me, I'm still glad they did.
So we don't at this time have any elections scheduled for next year, so that'll be an off year, and hopefully they'll have a whole year to figure out this this voting thing. But our next scheduled election will be in 2020. It'll be the presidential primary, and probably I think that's in February or March, somewhere in there. But that's when the next scheduled election will be.
Dan?
I just want to reiterate what Randy said about the absentee ballots. I've done them now for a couple of years, and I like them because you can really take your time and read them over and understand the ballot and fill it in on your leisure and then bring them back. And to me, that's the way to go. It really is.
Dave, did you have your hand up?
No, scratch my head.
Not before. when I looked.
Well, and just give a little background. On the absentees now, you're supposed to have a reason, like you're over 60, or there's like 4 or 5 reasons. With what just passed yesterday, it'll just be, if I want one, you can get one, so.
Takes more time, don't it? For you to,
No, actually, it doesn't take any more time. I have to set up another precinct, but that's not it actually takes less time and it's less confusing, because if I have a lot of absentees, I set up a different precinct with absentees, so that's all they do is absentee ballots. Otherwise, if I don't do that, they process them in the precinct. And with the amount of people we have coming in, it's very difficult to get them all done while you're doing the regular election. It can get confusing really fast. I think the city of Marquette yesterday, they had to do all their absentees after 8 o'clock. So and it took us, at 700 ballots, it took us from 10 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. So that's how long it takes to process them with those machines we have now. I think they got out of there at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning. So that was, yeah, I'm glad that didn't happen here.
That's why I heard somebody say that all the returns were coming real slow. I think you said that, Randy. I didn't watch it. Any other comments to share? No, we're good. Then we can go into closed session. If you want to read that, Randy?
I'll move to enter into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268 subsection C for the strategy and negotiating session connected with the negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement if either negotiating party requests a closed hearing. And I need a second.
I'll second it.
yeah.
Okay, Clerk Rattari is yes. Supervisor Duran.
Yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes?
and Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
We are in closed session at 8:40 PM.